Captain Sarah Chun wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed over another fallen boulder. The purple sun of Kepler 442b cast strange shadows across the rocky terrain, making every step treacherous. Her scanner beeped steadily, pointing deeper into the canyon where no human had ever set foot. The discovery had started 3 weeks ago when her deep space mining vessel picked up an energy signature unlike anything in the galactic database. The readings were so strange that the ship's AI had flagged it as a possible malfunction. But Sarah knew better. After 15 years exploring the outer rim, she could smell mystery from 1,000 light-years away. Her boots crunched on crystalline sand as she descended into the canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, carved with patterns that seemed too perfect to be natural. Sarah ran her gloved hand along the smooth stone, feeling the deliberate curves and angles. Someone or something had shaped this place long ago. The energy readings grew stronger with each step. Sarah's equipment registered power levels that should have been impossible for any known technology. Even the most advanced human fusion reactors couldn't generate readings this intense. Yet there was no visible source, no machinery or structures that might explain the phenomenon. As she rounded a bend in the canyon, Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. Before her stretched a wall of black metal that seemed to absorb light itself. The surface rippled like liquid mercury, yet remained solid to the touch. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its edges, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sarah activated her translation matrix, but the symbols defied every known language in the galactic archives. The pattern seemed almost alive, shifting and changing as she watched. Her scanner went wild, registering energy spikes that peaked beyond its measurement capabilities. She approached the wall carefully, every instinct screaming that this was something beyond human understanding. Yet curiosity drove her forward. This was why she had left Earth's comfortable colonies behind, why she chose the dangerous life of an independent explorer. Moments like this, when a universe revealed its deepest secrets. As Sarah reached toward the wall, the symbols suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The metal surface began to part like curtains, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness. Cool air flowed out, carrying scents of ozone and something else, something organic and alien. Her heart pounded as she stepped across the threshold. The walls inside were the same liquid black metal, but here they were alive with moving patterns of light. The corridor seemed to stretch forever, yet her scanner showed it was only 50 meters long. Space itself felt twisted here, bent by forces she couldn't comprehend. Sarah activated her suit's recording systems. Whatever happened next, humanity needed to know about this place. The very existence of such advanced technology changed everything about their understanding of the galaxy. As she walked deeper into the structure, the walls began to hum with increasing intensity. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through her bones and making her teeth ache. Yet there was something almost musical about it, as if the fortress itself was singing. Her scanner detected massive spaces beyond the walls, chambers larger than Earth's biggest cities. The energy readings suggested technology that could power entire star systems. Whatever species had built this place, they had mastered forces that humans were only beginning to understand. Sarah reached the end of the corridor and found herself facing another barrier. This one was different, translucent, and shifting like looking through disturbed water. Beyond it, she could make out vast chambers filled with towering structures that defied description. But something else caught her attention. Movement. Slow and deliberate, as if something massive was stirring in the depths of the fortress. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the truth. This place wasn't abandoned. Whatever had built it was still here, waiting in the darkness. Her communicator crackled with static as she tried to contact her ship. The fortress was blocking all transmissions, trapping her inside with whatever dwelt in its depths. Sarah checked her weapon charge and took a deep breath. She had come too far to turn back now. The translucent barrier shimmered as she approached, and, for a moment, Sarah thought she saw eyes looking back at her through the distortion. Ancient eyes filled with intelligence, and something else, curiosity. The fortress had been waiting for someone to find it, and now that someone was here. As the barrier began to dissolve, Sarah stepped forward into the unknown, carrying with her the hopes and dreams of all humanity. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the courage that had carried her species to the stars. The chamber beyond the barrier defied every law of physics Sarah thought she understood. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, lost in swirling mists that glowed with their own inner light. Massive pillars twisted upward like frozen tornadoes, their surfaces covered in the same flowing symbols she had seen outside. But it was the silence that struck her most. Despite the fortress's earlier humming, this vast space was completely quiet. Even her footsteps seemed muffled, absorbed by the strange atmosphere. Sarah's scanner showed her that the air was breathable, though it contained trace elements unknown to human science. As she explored the chamber, Sarah discovered that the floor beneath her feet was not solid metal, but something far stranger. It felt firm enough to walk on, yet rippled outward from each step like liquid. The surface showed her reflection, but distorted it into impossible angles that hurt to look at directly. In the center of the chamber stood a structure that made Sarah's mind reel. It appeared to be a tree, but one made entirely of crystalline formations that pulsed with internal light. Each branch split into smaller branches in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical principles beyond human understanding. As Sarah approached, the crystal tree began to sing, a low, haunting melody that resonated in her bones. Her scanner detected massive data streams flowing through the crystal structure. This wasn't just decoration. It was some kind of computer or storage device on a scale that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. The amount of information contained within those glowing branches could hold the history of entire civilizations. Sarah reached out to touch one of the lower branches, and the moment her gloved finger made contact, the world exploded into light and sound. Images flooded her mind, visions of a galaxy teeming with life, of species that had evolved beyond physical form, of wars fought across dimensions that humans couldn't even perceive. She saw the builders of this fortress, beings of pure energy who had transcended their original bodies eons ago. They had been the gardeners of the galaxy, nurturing young species and protecting them from threats beyond imagination. The fortress was their final gift to the universe, a repository of knowledge waiting for someone worthy to claim it. But the visions also showed her something terrible, a darkness spreading from the galactic core, consuming entire star systems and leaving only void in its wake. The energy beings had fought this threat for millennia before finally retreating to hidden fortresses like this one, waiting for the right moment to emerge and fight again. Sarah jerked her hand back, gasping as the connection broke. The knowledge still burned in her mind, showing her truths about the universe that no human had ever suspected. Humanity wasn't alone, had never been alone. They were just the latest in a long line of species to reach for the stars, and like all the others, they would eventually face the choice between transcendence and extinction. As she struggled to process what she had learned, Sarah became aware that she was no longer alone in the chamber. Shapes moved at the edge of her vision, translucent forms that seemed to shift between dimensions. The energy beings were here, watching her with interest that felt both ancient and timeless. One of the forms solidified enough for her to make out its basic shape, vaguely humanoid but stretched and elongated, as if viewed through water. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in her mind without passing through her ears. "You are young," the being said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "Your species burns bright, but brief, like a candle in cosmic wind. Yet you have found us when others could not. Why?" Sarah straightened her shoulders, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. "Because we don't give up," she replied. speaking aloud to the presence in her mind. Humans keep pushing forward, even when we're afraid. Maybe especially when we're afraid. The being's form rippled with what might have been amusement. Fear. Yes, we remember fear. It drove us to become more than we were, just as it drives you now. But fear alone is not enough. The darkness that destroyed our physical forms grows stronger. Soon it will reach your spiral arm of the galaxy. Images flash through Sarah's mind again. Worlds consumed by shadows. Entire civilizations snuffed out in moments. The threat was real and immediate, closer than humanity realized. Earth itself lay directly in the path of this consuming darkness. What can we do? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Learn, the being replied. Grow. Become more than you are. The knowledge in this fortress could advance your species by millions of years, but knowledge without wisdom is destruction. You must prove that humanity is ready for such power. The chamber around them began to change, walls shifting and reconfiguring themselves into new patterns. Doorways opened where none had existed before, revealing corridors that led deeper into the fortress's mysteries. Sarah could sense vast libraries of information waiting beyond those passages, technologies that could reshape reality itself. But she could also sense the test that lay ahead. The energy beings would not simply hand over their secrets. They had learned too well the consequences of uplifting species too quickly. Humanity would have to earn its advancement, prove itself worthy of joining the ancient guardians who protected the galaxy from threats beyond imagination. Sarah checked her equipment and supplies. She had enough food and water for several days, and her suit's power cells were still at full charge. Whatever trials awaited her in the fortress's depths, she would face them as she always had, with determination and the stubborn refusal to quit that defined her species. The energy being's form began to fade, but its final words echoed clearly in her mind. The first test begins now, young guardian. Show us the strength that carried your kind to the stars. The corridor Sarah chose led her into a maze of challenges that tested every aspect of human ingenuity. The first chamber contained a puzzle that seemed simple at first glance. Arrange a series of floating crystal spheres into a specific pattern. But as Sarah began moving the spheres, she discovered they responded not just to physical touch, but to her emotional state and thought patterns. The energy beings were testing more than her intelligence. They wanted to understand the human mind itself. Sarah found that anger made the spheres burn with harsh light and become impossible to manipulate, while fear caused them to slip through her fingers like smoke. Only when she achieved a state of calm determination could she guide them into the proper configuration. As the final sphere clicked into place, the chamber walls dissolved, revealing a view of space that took her breath away. But this wasn't the space she knew. It was the galaxy as the energy beings saw it, alive with currents of force and streams of consciousness that connected every living thing. Sarah watched in awe as she traced the flow of life from one star system to another, seeing how the death of a single world could ripple across thousands of light years. The vision faded, and Sarah found herself in a new chamber facing a different kind of test. This room was filled with machinery that hummed with dangerous energy, its surfaces crackling with barely contained power. A holographic display showed her a scenario: a human colony ship trapped in a collapsing star system, with only minutes before the star went supernova. Sarah realized this was more than a simulation. Somewhere in real space and time, this scenario was actually playing out. The energy beings weren't just testing her problem-solving skills. They were asking her to save actual human lives. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The control systems were unlike anything in human technology, but Sarah had always been good at figuring out alien machinery. She traced the flow of power through crystalline circuits, following the logic of beings who thought in dimensions beyond human perception. The ship needed to jump to faster-than-light speed, but its engines were damaged, and conventional repairs would take too long. Sarah's solution was typically human in its audacity. Instead of fixing the engines, she rerouted power from the ship's life support systems directly into the jump drive. It was dangerous, giving the colonists only seconds of breathable air once the jump began, but it was their only chance. Her hands flew over the alien controls, channeling power in ways the original designers had never intended. Warning lights blazed throughout the chamber as she pushed the fortress's systems beyond their normal parameters. The holographic display showed the colony ship beginning to glow as massive amounts of energy built up in its damaged hull. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought she had miscalculated. The ship's hull began to crack under the strain, atmosphere venting into space as structural supports failed. But then, the jump drive engaged, and the ship vanished in a flash of brilliant light, escaping the dying star with seconds to spare. Sarah collapsed against the control console, exhausted by the effort. She had saved 3,000 human lives, but the energy beings weren't done testing her yet. The chamber reconfigured itself once again, this time creating a perfect replica of her childhood home on Earth. The psychological impact hit her like a physical blow. She stood in her mother's kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that looked out on the familiar landscape of the Australian outback. Even the smell was perfect, bread baking in the oven, coffee brewing on the counter, the faint scent of eucalyptus carried on the morning breeze. "Sarah," her mother's voice called from the next room, exactly as it had sounded 20 years ago. "Is that you, sweetheart?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she realized the cruelty of this test. The energy beings weren't just challenging her mind or her skills. They were testing her heart, her commitment to humanity's future versus her longing for the past. She could stay here in this perfect recreation of home, live out her remaining days in comfortable illusion, or she could move forward into uncertainty. But as she looked around the familiar room, Sarah noticed something the energy beings had missed. On the kitchen table sat a photo of her as a child, standing next to her grandfather's old spacecraft. Even as a 5-year-old, she had been looking up at the stars with wonder and determination. This room represented her past, but those stars represented her destiny. "I'm sorry, Mom," Sarah whispered to the empty air, then turned and walked away from the illusion. The moment she crossed the threshold, the chamber dissolved, revealing the energy being that had been watching her struggle. "You surprise us, young guardian," it said, its form more solid now, as if her trials had somehow made her more able to perceive its true nature. Most species cling to the familiar when faced with transcendence. But humans, you seem drawn to the unknown. Sarah wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "We're explorers by nature. Always have been. It's what makes us human, this need to see what's beyond the next hill, the next star, even when it scares us." The being's form rippled with something that might have been approval. "Then, you are ready for the final test. But know this, what lies ahead will change not just you, but your entire species. The knowledge we offer comes with a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" Sarah thought of the 3,000 colonists she had just saved, of the billions of humans scattered across the galaxy who had no idea that a cosmic threat was heading their way. She thought of Earth, blue and beautiful in her memories, and all the worlds humanity had yet to discover. "What's the price?" she asked. "Leadership," the being replied. "To receive our knowledge, humanity must have guardians who can wield it wisely. You would become the first of a new kind of human, enhanced, long-lived, charged with protecting your species from threats they cannot imagine. But you would also become something apart from them, forever changed by what you learn here." Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling on her. Accept, and she would gain the power to save humanity, but lose her place among them. Refuse, and her species might face the coming darkness unprepared. It was the kind of impossible choice that defined human existence. No perfect answers, only the courage to choose a path and live with the consequences. "I accept," she said without hesitation. "Someone has to step forward. Might as well be me." The energy being's form blazed with sudden light, and Sarah felt power flowing into her, changing her on a fundamental level. The final test was about to begin. The transformation began as a tingling sensation in Sarah's fingertips, but quickly spread throughout her entire body like liquid fire. She could feel her DNA being rewritten at the molecular level, human limitations being stripped away and replaced with something far more complex. Her vision sharpened until she could see individual photons dancing through the air, and her mind expanded to process information at speeds that would have been impossible before. But with the enhancement came pain, not physical but emotional. Sarah could suddenly sense the life force of every human in the galaxy, a vast network of consciousness that connected her species across impossible distances. She felt their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears, as if they were her own. The responsibility was overwhelming. This is what we experience, the energy being explained as Sarah struggled to adapt to her new perceptions. When you transcend physical form, you become connected to all life. Every death diminishes you. Every birth fills you with joy. It is why we became guardians. We could no longer bear to watch civilizations destroy themselves through ignorance. As the immediate shock of transformation faded, Sarah found herself standing in a new chamber that defied description. The walls seemed to be made of compressed starlight, and the floor was a map of the entire galaxy rendered in living crystal. She could see the flow of the cosmic threat spreading outward from the galactic core like ink through water, consuming everything in its path. What exactly is it? Sarah asked, studying the spreading darkness. With her enhanced perceptions, she could make out details that had been invisible before. The threat wasn't a physical force, but something far worse, a kind of anti-life that unraveled the fundamental forces holding reality together. The Devourers, the energy being replied, its mental voice heavy with ancient sorrow. They are what remains of the first species to achieve transcendence in this galaxy. But they chose a different path than we did. Instead of becoming guardians, they became consumers, feeding on the life force of entire civilizations to fuel their own existence. Sarah watched in horror as the map showed her how the Devourers operated. They would infiltrate a star system by possessing key individuals, turning them into conduits for the anti-life force. Those possessed would spread the corruption to others, creating cascade failures that could destroy entire worlds in days. Once a civilization was consumed, the Devourers would move on to the next target, leaving only empty space behind. How do we fight something like that? Sarah asked, though she was already beginning to understand the answer. The fortress around her wasn't just a repository of knowledge. It was a weapon designed specifically to combat threats that existed beyond physical reality. The energy being gestured to the crystalline map, and new information flowed into Sarah's enhanced mind. She saw weapon systems that could project force across galactic distances, shields that could protect entire star systems from corruption, and, most importantly, a network of fortress worlds hidden throughout the galaxy. Each one was similar to this facility, waiting for guardians to awaken their defenses. There are 12 fortress worlds in total, the being explained. Each one requires a guardian to activate its systems. With your transformation, you can awaken the others and recruit guardians from among your species. But the Devourers are already moving toward human space. You have perhaps 5 Earth years before they reach your core worlds. 5 years to find 11 more humans capable of the transformation, to train them in technologies beyond current understanding, and to prepare humanity for a war against forces that had consumed countless civilizations. Sarah felt the weight of every human life pressing down on her, but she also felt something else, determination that burned brighter than any star. "Show me how to use the fortress," she said, stepping toward the control systems that materialized around the crystal map. "And teach me everything you know about fighting these things." The next several hours passed in a blur of information transfer that would have killed her unenhanced human brain. Sarah learned to manipulate forces that existed in 11 dimensions, to project her consciousness across interstellar distances, and to recognize the subtle signs of devourer infiltration. The energy beings downloaded millions of years of experience directly into her mind, showing her battles fought in spaces between galaxies and victories won at costs that staggered the imagination. But perhaps most importantly, they taught her about hope. Despite their losses, despite the countless civilizations they had failed to save, the energy beings had never stopped fighting. They had learned that even the smallest spark of life was worth protecting, that the universe was richer for every unique perspective it contained. As the teaching session ended, Sarah found herself changed in ways that went beyond the physical transformation. She could feel the fortress responding to her thoughts, its vast systems coming online after eons of dormancy. Weapons that could crack moons powered up, shields that could deflect the energy of dying stars activated, and communication arrays that could reach across the galaxy began broadcasting a signal that would guide her to the other fortress worlds. Your species has a saying, the energy being said as its form began to fade. Something about not going gentle into that good night. We find his philosophy intriguing. Perhaps humanity will succeed where others have failed. Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of those words in her enhanced bones. Humans had always been survivors, had always found ways to adapt and overcome impossible odds. They had climbed down from trees and reached for the stars, had survived ice ages and world wars, had scattered across the galaxy despite every obstacle the universe could throw at them. The Devourers are about to learn what happens when they threaten a species that refuses to quit, Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions. They're about to meet humanity. The energy being's form smiled, an expression that translated across species and forms of existence. Then, let the true test begin, Guardian Shun. Show us that the universe was right to birth your stubborn, impossible, magnificent species. As the being faded completely away, Sarah turned her attention to the fortress systems. She had work to do, 11 Guardians to find, a galaxy to prepare for war, and a cosmic threat to face down. But, for the first time since entering the fortress, she felt ready for the challenge ahead. After all, she was human, and humans had never learned how to surrender 6 months later. Sarah stood on the command deck of the fortress, watching as the last of the 11 Guardian candidates completed their transformation. Each one had been chosen carefully. Scientists, explorers, soldiers, and artists from across human space, united by their refusal to accept defeat. The process had been exhausting, requiring her to travel to distant worlds and identify individuals capable of bearing the burden of cosmic responsibility. Dr. James Wong had been the easiest to convince, the xenobiologist immediately understanding the implications when Sarah demonstrated her enhanced abilities. Captain Maria Santos took longer, the military officer demanding proof of the Devourer threat before accepting transformation. But it was Kenji Nakamura, the young artist from the Outer Rim colonies, who surprised them all by adapting to his new abilities faster than anyone else. Now all 12 Guardians stood before the galactic map, watching as their enhanced senses detected the first signs of Devourer infiltration in human space. 3 frontier colonies had gone dark in the past week, their communication arrays falling silent one by one. The pattern was unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. The corruption is spreading faster than we anticipated, reported Guardia Martinez, her consciousness linked to monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. They're not just targeting random settlements. They're going after our communication hubs and supply routes. Someone is feeding them intelligence about our infrastructure. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the fortress's controlled environment. The Devourers had never shown this kind of strategic thinking before. Either they were evolving new tactics, or they had found a way to access human databases and planning systems. Dr. Wong, what's the status on the detection protocols? Sarah asked, turning to the transformed xenobiologist who had been working on ways to identify possessed individuals. I've identified 17 biomarkers that appear when someone becomes a conduit for anti-life energy, Wong replied, his enhanced mind processing data streams from across human space. The problem is that, by the time we can detect them, they've usually already spread the corruption to others. We need to get ahead of this somehow. Guardian Santos stepped forward, her military training evident in her posture despite her transformation. I've been analyzing their attack patterns, and I think I see a weakness. The Devourers need physical proximity to begin the possession process, at least initially. If we can identify their insertion points and respond quickly enough, we might be able to contain the spread. Sarah nodded, but her enhanced perceptions were picking up something else, a disturbance in the quantum field that suggested incoming faster-than-light traffic. She extended her consciousness toward the approaching vessels and felt her blood run cold. "We're about to have company," she announced. "A human fleet is approaching, but something's wrong. I'm detecting anti-life signatures aboard several of the ships." The Guardians moved to their stations with practiced efficiency, bringing the fortress's massive weapon systems online. Through the crystalline walls, they could see the human fleet dropping out of hyperspace. 37 ships ranging from small scouts to massive dreadnoughts. But, as Sarah focused her enhanced senses on the fleet, she could see the corruption spreading through them like a cancer. "This is Admiral Richardson aboard the UES Prometheus," came the communication from the lead dreadnought. "We're responding to reports of alien activity in this system. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Sarah recognized the name. Richardson was one of the most respected officers in the human fleet, a hero of the Centauri War, and a man known for his integrity. But when she focused her perception on his ship, she could see the anti-life energy flowing through its corridors like black veins. "Admiral, this is Guardian Shun," Sarah responded, her enhanced voice carrying across multiple communication channels simultaneously. "I'm afraid you and your crews have been compromised by hostile forces. We're going to need you to maintain distance while we work on a solution." The response was immediate and violent. Energy beams lanced out from the corrupted fleet, impacting against the fortress's shields with enough force to crack planets. But the ancient defenses held, absorbing and redirecting the energy into the fortress's power grid. "Guardian Nakamura, can you get through to any of the uncompromised crew members?" Sarah asked, knowing that the young artist's unique abilities made him particularly sensitive to human consciousness. Nakamura's face contorted with concentration as he extended his awareness toward the fleet. "There are still clean minds aboard most of the ships," he reported. "The corruption hasn't spread to everyone yet, but it's moving fast. Maybe 10 minutes before they're all consumed." Sarah made a decision that would have been impossible for her unenhanced human mind to process. She began extending her consciousness across the space between the fortress and the fleet, reaching for every uncompromised human mind she could find. The effort was staggering, like trying to hold conversations with thousands of people simultaneously, but her enhanced abilities made it possible. To the clean minds, she projected images and understanding, showing them what had happened to their crewmates, what the corruption looked like, and, most importantly, how to resist it. The key was maintaining their essential humanity, their connection to life and hope and stubborn determination. Across the fleet, uncompromised crew members began to fight back. Some managed to reach weapon control stations and turn their ship's guns on the corrupted vessels. Others sealed themselves into secure sections and began broadcasting warning signals to the rest of human space. A few, those with the strongest minds, even managed to purge the anti-life energy from small sections of their ships. But the Devourers weren't passive opponents. As more humans resisted, the corruption began to concentrate itself, abandoning weaker hosts in favor of creating more powerful conduits. Sarah watched in horror as Admiral Richardson's form began to change, his body becoming a vessel for forces that existed beyond physical reality. "All Guardians, focus fire on the Prometheus," Sarah ordered. We can't let that manifestation fully materialize. 12 streams of energy lanced out from the fortress, each one guided by an enhanced human consciousness that understood exactly how to disrupt anti-life forces. The combined attack struck Richardson's ship just as the manifestation reached critical mass, unraveling the corruption at the quantum level. The explosion that followed lit up half the star system, but when the light faded, the remaining fleet ships showed clear energy signatures. The immediate threat was over, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. "Send word to Earth Command," she ordered as rescue ships launched to collect the survivors. "Tell them Guardian Protocol is now in effect. The war for human survival has begun, and we're the only thing standing between our species and extinction." As she spoke, Sarah felt the other fortress worlds responding to her signal, their ancient weapons powering up across the galaxy. Humanity might be facing its greatest test, but they wouldn't face it alone. The Guardians were awake, the fortresses were armed, and the universe was about to learn why humans had earned their place among the stars. The Devourers had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never faced a species that had learned to fight for every star, every world, every individual life. They were about to discover that some flames burned too bright to be extinguished, and that humanity's greatest strength had always been their refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The real war was just beginning, but Sarah smiled as she felt the determination of her fellow Guardians flowing through their shared consciousness. Humanity would endure, as it always had. After all, they were the species that had looked at the stars and decided to make them home. Captain Sarah Chun wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed over another fallen boulder. The purple sun of Kepler, 442b, cast strange shadows across the rocky terrain, making every step treacherous. Her scanner beeped steadily, pointing deeper into the canyon where no human had ever set foot. The discovery had started 3 weeks ago when her deep space mining vessel picked up an energy signature unlike anything in the galactic database. The readings were so strange that the ship's AI had flagged it as a possible malfunction. But Sarah knew better. After 15 years exploring the outer rim, she could smell mystery from 1,000 light years away. Her boots crunched on crystalline sand as she descended into the canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, carved with patterns that seemed too perfect to be natural. Sarah ran her gloved hand along the smooth stone, feeling the deliberate curves and angles. Someone or something had shaped this place long ago. The energy readings grew stronger with each step. Sarah's equipment registered power levels that should have been impossible for any known technology. Even the most advanced human fusion reactors couldn't generate readings this intense. Yet there was no visible source, no machinery or structures that might explain the phenomenon. As she rounded a bend in the canyon, Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. Before her stretched a wall of black metal that seemed to absorb light itself. The surface rippled like liquid mercury, yet remained solid to the touch. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its edges, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sarah activated her translation matrix, but the symbols defied every known language in the galactic archives. The pattern seemed almost alive, shifting and changing as she watched. Her scanner went wild, registering energy spikes that peaked beyond its measurement capabilities. She approached the wall carefully, every instinct screaming that this was something beyond human understanding. Yet curiosity drove her forward. This was why she had left Earth's comfortable colonies behind, why she chose the dangerous life of an independent explorer. Moments like this, when a universe revealed its deepest secrets. As Sarah reached toward the wall, the symbols suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The metal surface began to part like curtains, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness. Cool air flowed out, carrying scents of ozone and something else, something organic and alien. Her heart pounded as she stepped across the threshold. The walls inside were the same liquid black metal, but here they were alive with moving patterns of light. The corridor seemed to stretch forever, yet her scanner showed it was only 50 meters long. Space itself felt twisted here, bent by forces she couldn't comprehend. Sarah activated her suit's recording systems. Whatever happened next, humanity needed to know about this place. The very existence of such advanced technology changed everything about their understanding of the galaxy. As she walked deeper into the structure, the walls began to hum with increasing intensity. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through her bones and making her teeth ache. Yet there was something almost musical about it, as if the fortress itself was singing. Her scanner detected massive spaces beyond the walls, chambers larger than Earth's biggest cities. The energy readings suggested technology that could power entire star systems. Whatever species had built this place, they had mastered forces that humans were only beginning to understand. Sarah reached the end of the corridor and found herself facing another barrier. This one was different, translucent, and shifting like looking through disturbed water. Beyond it, she could make out vast chambers filled with towering structures that defied description. But something else caught her attention. Movement, slow and deliberate, as if something massive was stirring in the depths of the fortress. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the truth. This place wasn't abandoned. Whatever had built it was still here, waiting in the darkness. Her communicator crackled with static as she tried to contact her ship. The fortress was blocking all transmissions, trapping her inside with whatever dwelt in its depths. Sarah checked her weapon charge and took a deep breath. She had come too far to turn back now. The translucent barrier shimmered as she approached, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw eyes looking back at her through the distortion. Ancient eyes filled with intelligence and something else, curiosity. The fortress had been waiting for someone to find it, and now that someone was here. As the barrier began to dissolve, Sarah stepped forward into the unknown, carrying with her the hopes and dreams of all humanity. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the courage that had carried her species to the stars.